Well, hey guys, I'm really sorry to be a couple minutes late. I've kind of been like, it's been a bit of a day. I got permanently banned on Twitter today. Well, I actually don't think it's going to be permanent. Oh God, my hair looks crazy. I am going early today for happy hour because I'm going to a barbecue in a little bit and I needed to do it early so I could go to the barbecue at a reasonable hour. But I did get permanently banned. Well, permanently banned on my main account on Twitter today. And that actually does relate to what we're going to be watching at happy hour, to be honest. So if you haven't heard the news yet, you need to be subscribed to my Substack, karlyn.substack.com, or you could sign up on my mailing list, you could join my locals, all those things. There are lots of options in the description down below. But you know what Twitter permanently banned me for? Is for, check this out. They banned me because I posted a Twitter thread talking about how today I filed a complaint with the New Hampshire Department of Education against the Exeter Region Cooperative School District because they are blatantly and egregiously violating the state's anti-CRT law. It is not even in question that Exeter is violating the state's anti-CRT law. I have caught them red fucking handed, and I reported them to the state today. And then I wrote a whole Twitter thread about why I reported them to the state. You can also see the full evidence also on my Substack, karlyn.substack.com. The Exeter Region Cooperative School District is openly violating New Hampshire's anti-CRT law. I nailed their asses to the wall on this. It is crazy. Even based on, and this does actually relate to happy hour today, but check this out. In their diversity, equity, inclusion, and justice mission statement, which is on their website, they say part of our educational mission is to awaken our students' awareness of their power and privilege so that they may view the world through a lens of equity and help eliminate unjust systems and practices. Well, that happens to be a violation of New Hampshire's anti-CRT law, because New Hampshire's anti-CRT law specifically says that an individual by his or her that you cannot teach the following: that an individual by virtue of his or her age, sex, gender, gender identity, sexual orientation, race, crease, color, all the immutable characteristics, you cannot in the state of New Hampshire teach that people are inherently racist, sexist, or oppressive, whether consciously or unconsciously. So when the Exeter Regional School Cooperative School District put into writing that their diversity, equity, inclusion, and justice plan is specifically intended to help students gain awareness of their power and privilege, you can't teach that without teaching that some people are inherently oppressive based on how they're born. And I even have more. And so based on this alone, this school district is breaking New Hampshire anti-CRT law. But I even have more than that. I have them working with this crazy group called Racial Equity Team. And what Racial Equity Team is doing is working with teachers in the classroom. These teachers, to be specific, these are two English teachers at Exeter High School. This is their extended learning coordinator. And they are working with them to revamp the way they're teaching To Kill a Mockingbird, because they thought that To Kill a Mockingbird was just a little too racist, and they thought it centered, oppressive voices in the form of Atticus Finch. And so the school worked with this team called Racial Equity Unit, which we're going to be talking, or racial Unity Team. I always forget the name of this group. Racial Unity Team. They worked with this group to integrate new curriculum into the classroom. I have video of students saying that they believe all white people are racist. I have video of students saying that they need to check their privilege. Those things are not allowed to be taught in New Hampshire schools. And what's even more is this racial unity thing also profiles the school on their website, talking about how they integrated their stuff into the classroom. They also, by pure coincidence, I'm sure, the teachers from Exeter High School are on fucking staff, or maybe not staff, but they're on the leadership team of this racial unity team. They are on their leadership team's website, and the superintendent of the schools is on their board of directors. So this isn't an incestuous little nightmare at all. Anyway, I exposed all of this stuff last night. I did a giant Twitter thread about it. And almost immediately upon me posting the Twitter thread, which started with this, I was permanently banned on Twitter on my main account. And the reason that Twitter gave for banning me was that I posted private information, except that I didn't post private information. What I posted in this tweet were government email addresses. These are the people in the state of New Hampshire that you report this to when you are filing a human rights complaint following state law. So I gotta say, I'm not actually upset about this. I'm not. I actually think the ban is going to get overturned. They're going to have to reinstate this. There is no way that they can make the argument that I violated their terms of service. But B, even if for some reason they don't, I always knew I was going to get banned on Twitter anyway, and I would rather, to be honest, get banned on Twitter for something like this than over something stupid. I would much rather get this is something you can fight. This is something you can make an example of. This is one of the very best reasons I could have received a permanent ban on Twitter. I always knew it was going to happen. I've been warning people for years. Like, I'm definitely going to get banned on Twitter at some point. It's absolutely going to happen. I think everyone's going to get banned on Twitter at some point. And so I would rather have it for something as clear cut as this, because all I pasted was publicly available government emails, the emails that parents need to contact when they're filing human rights complaints for schools that are breaking the law in New Hampshire, which is the proper process that you have to go through. So I have no shame. I have no worries. I actually don't really care. I still have my actively unwoke Twitter account, which you can find at twitter.com/actively unwoke. And so everyone can please follow me on there. We're going to be doing lots of great stuff. I also have, as you know, I do have an occasional burner account or two, but I have other Twitter accounts too. So I'm really not worried about it, guys. I do appreciate the support I've gotten. It's been really great so far. And you know, it is what it is. But it actually does coincide with the video that we are going to be watching today. And I just need a second to get it up on my screen. We today are going to be watching a video from the Racial Unity team. Let me show you. So I did all this research into Exeter High School last night, and to be quite frank, like I got through a lot of it, but there's all sorts of stuff. So this is the Racial Unity Team YouTube channel, that group that is working with Exeter High School and violating state law in New Hampshire, and they got a whole bunch of crazy ass videos on their channel. One of those videos was posted on September 1st, 2021, which is, let's just remind ourselves, several months after the state of New Hampshire implemented the Divisive Concept Bill. And they posted this video talking to kids about race, an inquiry, an invitation. And so that is what we are going to watch today for happy hour. I'm basically doing homework. I was going to do this anyway. I need to watch some of these videos. I need to get an idea of who this Racial Unity team actually is. We've actually encountered them before. I actually did a stream about these guys like 11 months ago when they were actually doing a meeting at Exeter High School. And maybe we should go revisit that at some point. But I do need to get to know who these people are, because there's other stuff going on in Exeter that I think is, I don't have proof of it yet, but I have heard tell from parents that that school district is also doing shady shit in regards to gender. I don't have proof of it yet, though. I'm still looking into it, and I suspect there are going to be some FOIA requests, we call them right to know requests in New Hampshire, right to know requests in Exeter School District's future. But for right now, I do just want to watch this video and just kick back because it's Friday. We made it. And I'm going to a barbecue later, which is why I had to go live a little bit early. And I apologize, it's haphazard. Like, it took me can I tell you guys? It took me a long ass time to post that Twitter thread, like, that I got permanently banned for. And I have it up and running again on this on my actively unwoke account, but I had to redo my whole Twitter thread. I was so mad. That Twitter thread took a long fucking time to put together. And it was just my computer was running slow. Anyway, and then of course I was dealing with the messages and getting an article up about getting permanently banned over sharing publicly available government information. It's just been a little hell of a day, so I've been a little frazzled, but I mean, it's good. It's good. But guys, if you would like to support the work I'm doing, listen, this stuff that I did with Exeter, with this stuff, this is going to be part of the new Schools Exposed project as part of the Unwoke Army on activilyunwoke.com, where basically we are crowdsourcing information about the schools and we are looking into them and trying to expose what the schools are doing based purely on publicly available information. And the goal of this is that I want to show parents how to investigate their schools based on stuff that's on the internet, because they're putting all of this out there publicly. And so one of the reasons I wrote this article on Exeter is I wanted to, and I will probably do a stream about it over the weekend because I meant to do it today. I was going to do it earlier and then I got this Twitter ban and it just got derailed. But I want to show parents how to do the research that I did into this school district, because I did this all last night. This was almost start to finish done in several hours last night, which, of course, you don't have to be a freak like me and stay up till 2 a.m. investigating school districts. I understand I'm a little strange. But what I can show parents is exactly how to find the same information I did by demonstrating it to them and showing them what it all means. And that is what the Schools Exposed project is all about. It is going to be one of the 4 core projects of the Unwoke Army moving forward. I am having a webinar next week about the Unwoke Army. And so, oh, you're seeing my back end in WordPress. That's okay. But I am having this here webinar next week, if that ever loads. You guys don't need to see this. You don't need to see this. Oh, yes, I do. Oh, it does work. Oh, how fun. Oh, God. You don't need to see that. You don't need to see that particular thing. There's nothing secret in that. Oh, look, oh, look. I installed this plugin on my website to allow me to receive notifications on the website. I'm glad that's working. But I am hosting this webinar next week on Wednesday, all about the Unwoke Army and telling people how they can get involved with it. Everyone is invited to get involved with it if you want to. But please come to this webinar on Wednesday. If you cannot make the webinar on Wednesday, then please sign up for it anyway, and you'll be sent a recording. It is free. You don't have to pay anything to come. And I just want to lay out some principles and what I'm thinking about with the Unwoke Army. And we have 4 core projects that we're going to be working on. Like I said, Schools Exposed is doing crowdsourced journalism on what the schools are doing based on publicly available information. We got the Burlington project that we're getting back to. We've got Groomergate, which is we're going undercover. I'm in more trans online spaces than I probably should be, and they are fucking nuts. And there are a couple other people that are infiltrating trans online groups as well, mostly looking at what we're really looking at is how are young girls experiencing those online spaces when adults are not around. And so we're going to be exposing a lot of stuff with that. And then of course we have Spy Stream as well. So lots of stuff going on there. What is this little doohickey? Huh. Oh, it's a notification thing. Okay, that's good to know. Don't even know how my own website works sometimes. Well, guys, if you would like to submit your school to get to be exposed, as it were, we are taking submissions. So if you want us to take a look into your school district and use it as an example for how to investigate the schools and to tell you if there's anything fishy going on that you need to know about, head over to unwokearmy.com and find this banner here, and then click on this here button. It says add your school's data. And that's going to take you to this page explaining exactly what we're doing in terms of gathering the school's information. And then click this here button and you're going to get to do a survey. And in that survey, I'm going to ask you for your school's website URL, the website of the Diversity and Equity Office, any YouTube channels that they have, making sure that if they have separate YouTube channels that we're putting both, and any other information you think will be helpful. You can submit this survey completely anonymously. You don't have to give me your email, but if you do give me your email, I will add you to the mailing list and we will keep in touch and give you updates about what is going on if we find something. So that's something you can find over at unwokearmy.com. Now, if you would like to support the work I'm doing, you can head over to, and I'll put this in the chat right now and maybe even pin it to the top if I am on my game. You can head over to activilyunwoke.com/support, and you can sign up for monthly donations on Patreon, everywhere from $5 a month to $250 a month. Listen, I need to fund the Unwoke Army. This is, if you have been waiting to support the work I'm doing because you're like, Karlyn, you're just complaining on the internet. Like, I don't know. No, this is an actual real thing. We are going to be funding crowdsourced journalism. And guess what, guys? We need money for FOIA requests. We really do. A portion of the proceeds that I get through all of this stuff is always going to get reinvested back into Actively Unwoke. It's always going to get reinvested back into the Unwoke Army. And the rest of it's going to buy me the time I need to be able to coordinate all of this stuff. If you don't like Patreon, that's totally cool. You can join in locals as a monthly and annual supporter or make a one-time gift. You can also subscribe to my different Substacks and make a gift on there. And all of that goes to exactly the same place. It all goes into the same pot. And I really do appreciate the support. I need it to keep the show running. And I really can't do it without you guys. All right, let's do this. We're going to get into watching this because I got to get started. I got to go to a barbecue. Got to do a little bit speedy today. That's all right. All right. So I've got that up, but I'm also going to pour, hang on. Let me do my beer. Let's just chill for a second. Relax. Today I have a very exciting beer. Very exciting. I have not one, but two. Left Hand pumpkin spice latte nitro pumpkin ale with spices and coffee added. It is everything that I love about beer. It is pumpkin, it is coffee, and it is nitro. You should always get nitro beer if you have the option. Especially if you're at the bar and it's on and they have like they have it on tap. Oh, dude, nothing better. Nothing better. Liberty Lion, I just got through explaining it, so you're gonna have to watch from the beginning if you want to know how I got banned. But look at that. When even in the can, nitro is still good. You might think of it as like Guinness or store stuff, and that's fine. But look at how nice and rich and creamy that beer is. Oh my god, it's so good. It's so pretty. It's so pretty. Left Hand does do some good stuff. Left Hand you can find a lot of places too. Oh, it's so pumpkin-y. Look at the foam. It's so delightful. Cheers, guys. Happy Friday to you. Now let's get this party started and let's learn how the woke left and the racial unity team talk to kids about racism in New Hampshire.
Good morning. My name is Ken Mendes, and I chair the board of directors of the Racial Unity Team.
I am deeply familiar with Ken right now.
I'm so pleased to welcome every one of you.
Deeply familiar with Ken.
Teaching kids about race, an inquiry and invitation. The mission of the Racial Unity Team is to advance relationships among people of different racial identities, increase understanding, and reduce bias in our community. Our vision is to lay a foundation for developing racial understanding and establishing a transformational goal of developing communities that promote racial diversity and understanding. Thank you again for joining us. And this is an exciting program that we've been working on. And what I want to do is talk a little bit about what the Racial Unity Team is doing. As I mentioned earlier, we're around for 7 years, and we have been working with our schools, the legislature, Department of Education, petitioning the governor to diversify the School Board of Education. And I'm happy to say that this year we have brought in a person that we think is an excellent choice that the government had made to diversify the school board. He's a Black individual from Manchester, and I'm happy to see that. We continue to want to diversify the school board of education.
Yes, because being Black is the most important qualification for a fucking job.
We'll be looking for a Native American
oh my God.
representative to be on that school board of education.
We should have a whole rainbow of color on the school board.
The statistic that I want to share with you and why what we are doing in the community is so important is that very few people know that the number of Asians in our state, according to the most recent census.
Yes, this is New Hampshire. Yes, they're in New Hampshire.
We have about 2.68% Asians in our state.
Exeter, yes.
And
Yes, sour kiwi. Just last night, I'll put it in the chat. Just last night, I exposed the Exeter Region Cooperative School District. They're openly violating the anti-CRT laws. Here, I just popped that in the chat for you if you want to take a look.
Hispanics about 3%. But when you go into the local schools, on the seacoast and the major cities, Asian population is running around 4 to 5%. That's not counting children of 2 or more races. A good number of children of 2 or more races, about 50% of them are of Asian ancestry as well. So our schools in the seacoast area, typically between 5 to 6% are Asians. And that's one reason why, this topic of how we relate to Asian children is so important, especially with the current events that have happened. And so we'll be hearing some of that from our speakers as well. And today, personally, I'm delighted and honored really to introduce Dr. Monica Chu to join us this morning. Dr. Chu will be our moderator for the event, teaching kids about race and inquiry and invitation. I did some research on Dr. Chu's background, and she has a tremendously powerful and impressive background. She has a PhD in English from Emory University, an MA in English from the State University of New York, and a BA from St. Catherine's University. But what is also so important is her research areas are Asian North American studies, graphic narratives and comics, race and ethnic studies, and visual culture. Her academic articles, she's got 28 academic articles and about 6 books. And I just learned today that she's got another one in writing. And there are 2 books that impressed me. One is Asian Americans in New England, Culture and Community. That was written in 2009. And the other one is Drawing New Color Lines, Transitional Asian American Graphic Narrative. Dr. Chu has been with the University of New Hampshire for 24 years, and we are so delighted to have her here. And she's part of the Racial Unity Team at Asian American and Pacific Islanders Advisory Group. And without further ado, I'm going to turn over the mic to Dr. Chu.
Thank you, Ken. And good morning, everybody. Thank you for joining us on a Saturday morning, relatively cooler today at about 85 in New Hampshire. I can't imagine that I would call that relatively cooler, but given that
New Hampshire is very white, burning, Progressive Rising, it is true.
85
it is true.
Cool. So I'm just going to start out here with a brief mention of a New York Times opinion page article that came out just last month, July 18th, 2021. And it's called Really Talk to Your Kids About Race by a woman called Melinda Wenner Moyer. And her basic premise is that talking to kids about race doesn't perpetuate racism. In fact, it increases the understanding that children have of their peers, and it also assists in the self-esteem of minority children, and that suppressing
I'm going to speed this up a little bit, guys. Sorry.
Makes the situation worse. And if schools
She's talking very slow.
Can't have these discussions, then parents and guardians should. And I think that, and teachers as well. So
Kate Slater is from New Hampshire, but she lives in Massachusetts
so in the next hour and a half or so, we are going to approach how do we start and have age-appropriate discussions about race with our Asian American Pacific Islander children. And today's session focuses specifically on, preschool, kindergarten, up through grade 3. Other questions that might come up include, when do kids recognize race, and what does that portend for our discussions both in school and at home? And how do classroom discussions about race impact AAPI students in that room? So very quickly, the shape of the panel will be such that first I will introduce both Sarah Leonard and Dr. Bethany Silva, and then they will each present for about 10 to 15 minutes from their areas of expertise, and then we'll ask the audience to ask questions. So again, you can either raise your hand on the screen, use the reactions feature, or to type a question into the chat, and two folks will be monitoring that for me, and please tell me if there's a question in the chat that we can address. And then finally, just a couple of rules of engagement. Please don't allow the context for your questions or your inquiry to go beyond 2 minutes or so we can get to some of the replies, and also be mindful and respectful of our panel members and each other. A phrase I heard on
these guys are
radio this morning.
To speak to King Peter's point, these guys are on the seacoast in New Hampshire, which is it is absolutely bougie. Like they're the seacoast, the Portsmouth area, probably the most woke part of New Hampshire. It's because they're so close to fucking Massachusetts. It's like right over the Massachusetts line. Like you could literally throw a rock. And so where these people are in New Hampshire is a small state. You can drive from one end to the other to it in like a couple of hours. But where these people are in New Hampshire is super woke, super progressive, super bougie. So really important context.
Be exquisitely courteous. So thank you for that. All right, so I'm going to start
Not
off here
the
with
prettiest.
Sarah Leonard.
That's not
who
true.
Has a
The
bachelor's
White
in
Mountains are
Family
the
Studies
prettiest.
from the University of New Hampshire. And that is a focus on education of young children.
Maybe we'll see
and,
Kate Slater. Oh, that would be fun. We haven't seen Kate in a while.
She is credentialed as a New Hampshire master teacher and master professional. Her research and pedagogy support the exploration of diversity and family culture. She specializes in both emergent and anti-bias curriculum with a current
Kate
focus
is
on
an
the development
assistant
of
dean of
self-identity,
students
race,
at
and
Brandeis.
LGBTQ+ inclusivity. She began her professional career at the Child Study and Development Center, which is part of the Family Studies program at the University of New Hampshire, where she still works. So she began
good. Works at UNH, taxpayer funded. Oh, good. I'm so thrilled to know I'm paying this person's salary.
Preschool 1 program. And
Kate does pop up every now and again. Every once in a while, when you least expect it, Kate Slater, boom.
And I fondly remember Sarah because she taught my own children at the Child Study and Development Center many years ago. And she reminded me this morning that the pictures of my kids in the background.
Can I just tell you guys on like a separate side note, the woke leftist in Carrie Smith and Mike Harlow's Twitter horde, like they're all celebrating that I got banned on Twitter. And they don't realize that I got banned on Twitter for helping parents report schools that are breaking the law to the government. And it's just like, is there any clearer indication of who these people are? Is there any clearer indication that Carrie Smith and Mike Harlow are leading a woke leftist cancel mob Twitter horde that are celebrating that someone got banned for helping parents report schools who are breaking the anti-CRT laws to the government? If you want to know who's really on your team and who's not on your team, all you have to do is look at their actions. That's it. Just look at their actions. If someone is celebrating when a person, and I don't care if you like that person or not, if someone is celebrating when a person gets banned for helping parents report schools for teaching critical race theory when they should not be teaching critical race theory, when they are blatantly violating New Hampshire state law, and someone is helping those people understand how to report those schools to the state so the state can investigate, and that person gets permanently banned on Twitter for it, and Carrie Smith and Mike Harlow's Twitter mob, Twitter like woke Twitter cancel horde mob, they're celebrating it. That tells you all you need to know, man. Tells you all you need to know. They are controlled opposition, nothing more, always have been. They do not care about parents. They do not care about what's going on in the schools. They do not care about fighting back in any tangible way. They just on Twitter all day, every day, without doing a single productive thing. Whoever is celebrating this Twitter ban, you know exactly what they stand for. They hate parents. They love CRT in schools. They have no problem with it continuing. And that is Carrie Smith and Mike Harlow's bullying mob cancel horde that they have been cultivating for 2 fucking years on that platform. That's who these people are. They fucking love woke culture. They embrace woke culture. Carrie Smith is one of the most overt woke leftists I've ever seen in my life. And I'm not pulling any punches anymore. I already got my account banned. Who really cares? I am not pulling punches anymore. That bitch is a woke fucking SJW that embraces cancel culture, that doesn't want people reported to the state when they're breaking the fucking anti-CRT laws that some of us, Carrie, not you, but me, worked very fucking hard to get past. And she thinks it's perfectly okay for schools to violate those laws. They think it's perfectly okay for schools to teach critical race theory and indoctrinate kids into anti-racism, and they celebrate when people who are trying to stop it get permanently banned on Twitter. That is exactly who Carrie Smith is. That is exactly who Mike Harlow is. That is exactly who all of the no-name irrelevant people in that woke cancel mob that they run and cultivate on Twitter every day. That's exactly who they are. Never, ever, 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 ever forget that you can judge people by their actions. I was helping parents report schools for breaking the anti-CRT laws. They are not. They are whining and complaining and reeing. And if you go and if people support that, then you get what you fucking deserve, man. You get what you fucking deserve. I'm going to keep going regardless. Like I said, I don't really care about this Twitter ban at all. It makes absolutely no difference. I think it's going to get reinstated because that would be stupid. If it doesn't, then that is just something I can use to even nail Twitter to the wall even further. But regardless, it makes no difference in terms of the work I'm doing. If Carrie Smith or Mike Harlow or anyone in that Twitter horde lost their Twitter account for fighting back and telling parents and telling parents how to report them to the state, I'm frozen. Someone just said I was frozen. Hang on, I need to look at my... Can you guys hear me? Oh no, I'm not frozen. I don't know who said that. But anyway, if Carrie Smith and Mike Harlow had ever done something like this, which they would never do. Anyway, I've made my point with that. I made my point. Watch people's behaviors. Their behaviors will tell them all that you need to know. All that you need to know. All right, let's get back to it. Sorry to derail for a second.
Are actually those that she took. So I didn't realize that she had taken those. My kids don't remember Sarah, but I certainly do. So I'm so pleased to have her here this morning for her expertise. And then Dr. Bethany Silva is a research assistant professor of education and director of the Community Literacy Center at UNH, where she collaborates with professors, teachers, youth, and families to nurture New Hampshire's literacy network. She earned her doctorate in education.
Do they have any accomplishments?
Writing and literacy from the University of
So.
Pennsylvania, and she holds an MFA in writing for children and young adults from the Vermont College of Fine Arts. Her research focuses on developing and sustaining literacy programming that values the many ways individuals and communities engage with literacy in pursuit of their goals, specifically the way students and teachers can engage with books that feature racially diverse characters. And she won the 2017 Philadelphia Writing Project Award for outstanding commitment to practitioner inquiry and literacy instructional leadership from the University of Pennsylvania. So as you can see, we have lots of great expertise here, and I'm really looking forward to your short presentations and our discussion afterwards. So let's start with Sarah, okay? You'll have to unmute. Sarah, can you unmute?
You would think after all this time I would have this down pat.
I'm not entirely sure that the University in New Hampshire is allowed to teach this stuff because they are, of course, a state-funded institution. But let's continue. Let's continue with teaching kids about race, taxpayer-funded person from University of New Hampshire. Let's just pretend you're not breaking the law for 1 second.
But every once in a while, I have to second guess myself. Are you all able to see this PowerPoint presentation? Thank you, Monica, for inviting me to be a part of this conversation. In addition to being an early childhood educator, I'm also a teacher educator and a teacher coach. So I'm working with pre-service teachers who are just entering the field of teaching, and I'm also working with teachers who have been in the field for a bit of time. My introduction to anti-bias work happened in 2003 when John Nimmo became the executive director here at CSDC, and it completely changed my approach to teaching. So I'm really excited to be able to talk about the practices that we have here at the center. So CSDC has been at the university for quite a period of time. It was established in 1929 as a demonstration site for students. We've been at our current location since 1988. We have about 80 children who are enrolled in our program currently, and 17 full-time teachers and staff that are here. We're working with about 35 students who are employed. Some of those students are here in work study positions. Some of them are here hired hourly. We refer to all of our students as student teaching assistants, because if we say that we have a work study student in our classroom, we're inherently sharing part of their socioeconomic be inappropriate. So we've language that we use pretty clearly. We also have interns from the Human Development and Family Studies Department, occupational therapy, nutrition, psychology. So we're really working with the other the other majors within the College of Health and Human Services. We're also accredited by the National Association for the Education of Young Children, and we're licensed by the state. So there are certainly some requirements for us to be looking at diversity through a certain lens. And we have an inquiry approach. So our emergent curriculum really comes from implementing different provocations and really analyzing the documentation that we gather. And so I'll be sharing a bit about the self-identity work that I've done this year and kind of talk you through the process of the conversations that I've had with children, how we've thought about their thinking, and that might support you and the engagement that you have with your students or your children. So we have a diversity mission here.
Sorry,
I'm not
Judy,
gonna read through all of
closed
this 'cause it's really
captioning.
so dense.
I will.
You can find it right on the CSDC.
I can slow
website,
down.
and it
Hang
was
on. I'll
something
slow
that
down the
grew really
playback
from our
too.
diversity,
It's a little
equity, and
fast.
bias
She's
task
speaking.
force that we established
She's
in
speaking a little
2005.
fast.
And
I apologize.
this really
Holy
looked at looking
shit,
at what
that's
we
an ugly
had
slide.
from the university as a diversity
Sorry,
mission,
Spirit
and thinking
Matter.
about how we could support not only young children, but also college-age students in thinking about diversity. When I think about the philosophies that really impact our teaching at the center, I think of Laura Smalaguzzi, who was the founder of the Reggio Emilia schools in Italy. So we would say that we have a Reggio-inspired practice at the center. Really a big focus of that is on the image of the child. So how do we view the children in our classroom? Do we view them as capable, as competent, as collaborators?
Why would
as
you view
unique?
children as
And
capable?
we also
They're
think about the
children.
environment as our third
Children
teacher.
are
So the
not
first teacher would be
collaborators. They're
children.
children.
The second teacher would be the teachers, and then the environment really supporting the work that's happening. Another huge philosophy that we look to is Louise Derman Sparks. And when John was here as the director, John actually works directly with Louise on a number of things. So he would actually bring Louise into the center to do some training directly with us. She was the writer of the first edition of Anti-Bias Curriculum, and in the second and third editions, Julie Olson Edwards has joined her. We're also influenced by Magda Gerber, by Montessori, by Waldorf, by Tay Farwicki, by Forest Classrooms, and most recently, it's really been brought to my attention how integral Mr. Rogers has been in the way we think about the work that we do. I mean, when I think back to the programming that he was producing for young children, not only was he writing a script that he had checked by the psychology department to make sure that he was saying things in a developmentally appropriate way, he really broke a lot of boundaries around diversity. Thinking back to that episode where he's in the pool with the police officer, and that happened right around the time of the horrific pool incident in Pennsylvania, where people were putting bleach into the pool because there were people who were Black in the pool, and the work that he did around disabilities. So that has been core to what we've been doing. So Louise Dorman Sparks tells us that anti-bias curriculum is a way of teaching that supports children and their families as they develop a sense of identity in a diverse society.
No.
It helps children to learn to be proud of themselves and their family,
Wrong.
respect a range of human differences, recognize unfairness and bias, and speak up for the rights
That
of
is
others.
patently incorrect. It does not do that at all.
4 core values.
That is a
The
lie.
first is identity, the second is diversity.
What's bullet point number 4? Activism. They're literally, oh my God. Not even that, justice and activism. I missed bullet point number 3. She is literally advocating teaching children activism. Anti-bias education means teaching children activism. I'm really glad. I love it when they put such a fine point on this. I love it when people like the Racial Unity team put such a fine point on it that they are literally teaching children to be activists in the classroom with our taxpayer dollars in public schools.
The third is justice, and the fourth is activism. And so for many years in my role as an infant and toddler teacher, we worked a lot around identity and diversity, working with preschoolers and children who are early elementary school students all the way up to young adults and adults. You really can have an opportunity to talk much more about justice and activism. And that certainly has been a lens that we've looked at more with the Preschool 2 classroom this year, particularly around the events that are happening in our country. We read on the very first bit of January when we had returned from break, I was reading Martin's Big Words. And for years I've read this book and I've sort of edited it, feeling uncomfortable with using particular words like murder with young children and feeling like there needed to be a level of authenticity in my conversation. And we got to one point in the book and it has the word protest. And a child said, well, what does that mean to protest? And I said, well, protest is when you stand up and you say, this is wrong and I don't agree with it. I've been to a protest and I held a sign.
Is that
said,
true? Did they
Save
really
Our
do that?
And one of the children in our classroom just, you could see
I have no reason to
him
doubt
puff
you.
his chest out. And he took a deep breath and he said, I've been to a protest because Black Lives Matter.
Oh my
And I was
fucking
really
God.
taken back
Things
because
that
I hadn't
never
been in a
happened.
situation-
Things that never fucking happened. No, I don't believe that's this at all. That a child in a class said, I've been to a protest because Black Lives Matter. No, bullshit. Bullshit. I don't think that happened. Please.
where children were using that kind of language because I hadn't been working with 4 and 5-year-olds in such a long time.
You're telling
That
me a
question, or
4-year-old
that
did
conversation
that?
was followed up by
You are a
another question
liar.
from a child, because it does say that Martin Luther King Jr. at one point was shot and killed, and it also talks about him being arrested. And so this child looked at me and said, Sarah,
Liar.
was Martin Luther shot or arrested and shot? Or was Martin Luther arrested and shot? And he used his hands to really indicate, were these separate events that happened, or was this one event that happened at the same time? Was he shot during this arrest? And so I had to take a pause, even as someone who's been in the field for a long time, really doing anti-bias work, really take a deep breath and think about this from a child's perspective. Where was he coming from in this conversation? And one of the key parts of my work with anti-bias is answering things very honestly with children in a developmentally appropriate way, and then following up with families after, because I know that children are going to go home and have conversations, and wanting families to have some resources. So around the time that we read this book, we ended up sending several articles out to our families to say, we've had a really deep conversation around racial inequity, and children are asking a lot of questions. If they're asking these questions at home, here are a couple of resources that might support you in answering your child's questions best. I'm happy to share those if people would like them. I'll just have to dig in my email for them. It is never too young to talk about race. So I've kind of got this infant lens on as I head back to the infant room in a week and a half. And so we know that infants are able to distinguish between the races of
This is the infamous chart that says that children start becoming racist, like they reach peak racism at around 4 or 5. That's what this chart says. This has been used by the Arizona Department of Education. I'm really excited to see that this chart is being used by the University of fucking New Hampshire that I'm paying taxes to fund. Teaching kids that they start to become racist. This is when they think kids reach peak racism on this chart is 4 or 5, but they actually start identifying races earlier in the chart.
Of their caregivers by the time that they're 3 months old. Now, the biggest challenge to that in New Hampshire is that all of the caregivers at our school are white. We don't often have.
The biggest challenge to racism in New Hampshire is that all the caregivers at the school are white. I'm going to say that again. What this woman just said is the biggest challenge to defeating racism in New Hampshire is that all the caregivers at the school are white.
Have a lot of applicants who are not white. Being in New Hampshire, looking at the teacher education programs, we're getting a lot of the applicants that our programs are growing, but certainly are not as racially as diverse as we would prefer. I've had children in the toddler room ask questions around race very specifically, like, hey, that woman's got black skin. What's going on with that? I remember when we were reading Martin's Big Words, one of the questions was, well, you keep saying black. His skin is brown. And really trying to tease out some of the language that we've been using. As you can see by this graph, children are able to distinguish between race at a very early age. They're able to just discern between caregivers of the race that they are and other races. It impacts the way that they choose their playmates. And so it's imperative that we are having these conversations with children very early on. In my classroom this year, we certainly have lower numbers than we typically would, just to keep smaller group sizes to prevent the spread of COVID. But it is not uncommon for me to have at least 30 to 35% of my class who identify as Asian American Pacific Islanders. There have been years where I've had a large cohort of Hispanic students in my classroom. So at the beginning of the year, we're having a lot of conversations with families around their backgrounds and how we can partner with them in our classroom. When I think about self-identity, we have a number of things that we're looking at. We're looking at that self-identity and social identity, individual autonomy, initiative. Like, what kind of learner are they? What are their approaches to learning? Curiosity, their understanding of family, relationships, attachment, self-care, compliance, and these all come from right from the early learning standards that actually our assistant director helped to write. So this is a web. We use a lot of webbing to develop the curriculum in our classroom. And so we really dove right into self-identity. So there was certainly this piece about emotional development and self-advocacy, but we started to do a lot of work around self-portraits. We had a student in our classroom who was really interested in that. And quite honestly, the lens that I really worked to look at our curriculum through this year was, how do we look at the silver linings of COVID, right? So I could be in a situation where I could be very frustrated that children have to wear masks. I don't want to wear a mask. I know children don't want to wear masks, but we need to wear masks to take care of one another. And so I thought, okay, well, if we're going to start looking at self-identity,
that's a personal
let's
opinion. Other
capitalize on
people
these
disagree.
masks. We're going
YouTube.
to hyper-focus on eyes. And for children, you're really going to have that opportunity to focus much more easily because the rest of your face is covered for the most part. So we looked at that through a number of different ways.
They're going to write Schoolhouse Rocks
made
videos for this eventually, Pavel. You understand. Of course they will.
To create this, and any of the things in blue were things that we hadn't quite gotten to yet that we wanted to make sure we could still cover in our curriculum.
Of course they will.
So the first thing that we did was take photographs of children in their
you know
eyes.
what would be fun?
Strips that just had.
You know what would be great? What if we did like a dystopian kind of like Schoolhouse Rocks, like that's kind of like mocking the like that that mocks the idea, that mocks these ideas, like a dystopian version of it. I think that would actually be pretty cool. Yup, wait, what? I got permanently banned. I'm virtually positive the account's gonna get actually reinstated eventually. And even if it doesn't, I don't really care. It's fine. Whatevs. Whatevs. It is what it is. At least I got banned for something good, like teaching parents how to report schools to the government who are teaching critical race theory in defiance of the state's anti-CRT bill. At least I got banned for something good. I'll take that. I'll take it every day. We're all going to get banned on Twitter eventually. It is what it is.
Their eyes on them.
I'm not going to cry like a little bitch like Mike Harlow always did.
And it was interesting because at the very beginning of this process, all of the children identified that their eyes were round. My eyes are circular. Very rarely they'd use oval as a descriptor, but it was really about round. And so they spent a lot of time working with these gems. They ended up creating a box of gems for the toddlers because they had also been interested in that work. So it offered us the opportunity to have some cross-classroom collaboration. And at that point in time, there were 4 children in our classroom who had brown eyes. 3 of those children are Asian American. And none of them made the connection that their eyes might be the same color because they also share the same racial identity. And so my co-teacher and I kind of kept that not away from them, but we really wanted to have an opportunity to do some work and then reflect back with children on that. We did a lot of work around using transparencies, kicking it a little old school. I'm not sure, they're very difficult to find now. Really offered children another opportunity to think about the shape of their eyes. Monica, you might not be able to recognize, we actually taught in the large room. This is a classroom space that we created there because we needed to keep smaller group sizes. And so children would come back to this work every day that they were in the classroom. This work lasted for, I'm going to say 2 months total, just about eyes. We offer.
Do you notice how they call everything the work? Everything is the work. It's like, no, they're drawing. They're drawing. They're creating a drawing of their eyes. I'm not saying it's unimportant. It's good for kids to learn how to draw. It's good for kids to do that sort of stuff. I'm sure they had a curriculum where they were learning about eyes in the midst of that. But, or I would hope they would have had a curriculum where they were actually learning about eyes. Maybe they were just learning about the shape of the eye so as to not elicit Asian American hate or some such bullshit. But like, let's not pretend that these kids who are like 5-6 years old are doing important groundbreaking work, because they are not. They're learning how to fucking draw an eye.
Strips of paint. Actually, Jackie Stillwagon, who's on this Zoom call, cut all of these strips of paint for us. They're from the hardware store. And so we have a practice of letting children create the names for the items in our classroom. And so I could very easily say, these are some paint strips. We can figure out what color our skin might be. Our children decided that they would call them skin showers because they would show us the color of our skin.
Does this seem kind of racist to anyone else? Does it? Hang on. Sorry, guys. Does this seem kind of racist to anyone else? That they are literally cutting up these paint strips from the hardware store and getting people to match their skin tones to the paint strips? Hang on. I'm taking a screenshot of this. Does this seems racist to me. I'm sorry. Am I wrong about that? Hang on. I'm retweeting it under my actively Unwoke account, which of course is not just me and has other people involved in it. Of course it does. Otherwise it might be illegal for me to have this account now. Does that seem kind of racist to anyone else? Am I making that up? Yeah, it's racist.
skin. And in this middle photograph, the conversation that started was a child saying, well, I'm white. Are you white? You know, white is a term that we use, but is your skin truly white? And so they spent a lot of time going through, and we actually put white pieces of paper in so children can look and compare the color of their skin. The other thing I appreciate about this practice is that many of the books that we have that talk about racial identity or skin tones relate them to foods. And while I find that to be practical and sometimes consistent with where children are in their learning, sometimes it can be uncomfortable for people as well.
To talk about food?
These paint strips offered just some more language around the words that we could use to describe all of the different colors of brown. And we've got a couple of different books too that talk about skin tones. Like this is another one, Shades of Brown, which is a newly released book. I have also a book list of the things that we've used this year that I'm happy to share as a resource. Then we started to do some more sketching with eyes, pencils, pens, colored pencils. And again, children really represented their eyes circularly. And again, we did that, like how much conversation do we lead with what is happening in the classroom?
Wait. Are they going to tell kids that it's wrong to draw people with circular eyes because Asians have different kinds of eyes? Is that what we're talking about? Are they really going to tell kids that you shouldn't be drawing eyes as circles because Asians have more almond-shaped eyes? Oh my God.
And then they created self-portraits. Our student teacher for the spring semester.
Maybe I'm
worked
wrong
with
about that.
children
I could
to
be.
Take the skin showers that they had claimed as their own and mix paint to be the same color as that skin shower. And they're actually in jars behind me. I tried to set up like what it might look like if we were doing self-portraits in our classroom. And again, eyes all around. And we've asked children, like, do you think, let's look at your eyes. And I thought I need something else to kind of spark this conversation with children.
They really are. They really are telling kids, don't draw your eyes round. That's racist. They really fucking are. Holy hell. I was just like making that up. Wow.
So we started to look at diagrams of eyes. And for me, this was a huge wake-up call. Children wanted to know how to label the different parts of their eyes. And the photo, the image on the right, where it says parts of the human eye, was one of the only images I could find of eyes. And so my co-teacher, Kristen, and I were chatting, and I was like, this is a problem. Not only is it a problem that we only have, half of our class has blue eyes, but we're not offering any level of diversity in eye color.
She just said, holy shit. She just said that it's a problem that half of the class has blue eyes. And they're not offering any diversity of eye. Oh, we have to listen to that part again. I'm sorry. We have to.
At diagrams of eyes. And for me, this was a huge wake-up call. Children wanted to know how to label the different parts of their eyes. And the photo, the image on the right, where it says parts of the human eye, was one of the only images I could find of eyes. And so my co-teacher, Kristen, and I were chatting, and I was like, this is a problem. Not only is it a problem that we only have, half of our class has blue eyes, but we're not offering any level of diversity in eye color, in the shape of their eye.
It's a fucking eye! I know I just shouted into the camera, but what the fuck? What? It's a problem that a fucking kindergarten class does not have diversity of fucking eye color? Are you shitting me? Oh my God.
Where are all these images? And as we dug, all we were finding were Caucasian people with blue eyes as those diagrams of eyes.
You just said that half of your class had blue eyes.
A little bit longer. We'll do a little bit more digging and see what we can find. We did end up finding the photo on.
They're like, you will draw an Asian eye and you will like it. But we decided, like, if we can't find this, we're going to have to create it. As educators, we have to be really discerning about what images we're showing and what bias might be sent, or what message might be sent to children without us intending. The other thing that we found fascinating is if you tried to find any pictures of eyes, for someone who is Black, it almost exclusively talked about eye conditions or eye illnesses. And so that's certainly an area that we're going to be revisiting as educators of what can we do to really. This is a curriculum for kindergartners in which they are drawing eyes. This is not a medical education. Like, what in the holy hell is wrong with this woman?
shift that narrative, at least in the aspect of using eyes as part of our self-identity work. We use a lot of books in our classroom. My husband's not on the call, so I can say I've spent a lot of money this year buying books to support some of that work in our classroom. When I look at books, there are certainly historical books and folk tales. There are some books I don't choose to read in the classroom anymore, or if I do, I read with a different lens. So like Tiki Tiki Tembo is one of those classic books that can be in classrooms. However, is that really the message I want to be sending to children about the way that Chinese children are named? No. For a long time, if I was looking for books that had protagonists or even characters who were Asian American or Pacific Islander, you could only find them in books that had talked about adoption. And there are certainly books that have the explanation of culture. So like Bibimbap is a great book, but it does talk a lot about the practice of making the bibimbap, which is not a bad book. I love that book, but it is one classification of books that I look at when I look at books in my classroom. Then I think about books that just have characters in them or people in them who are Black, Indigenous, or people of color. Then there are books that have protagonists that are, so the main character is right there as someone who is Black, Indigenous, people of color, and it's not necessarily about them being Black or Indigenous or a person of color. It's just a book that has a character or that main character as someone who is BIPOC. And then kind of that next level is authors and illustrators. So really taking that opportunity to elevate voices in the field and with the books that we're offering. So I have recently gotten the book, Eyes That Kiss in the Corner. That was the other kind of reflection that we had. It was really challenging to find ways to describe eyes other than almond. Almost every example of supporting conversations with children and describing the shape of eyes, particularly eyes of a child who is Asian, talked about almond shaped. And none of our children really felt like that was an accurate description, but all of them were really drawn to this book, Eyes That Kiss in the Corner. And so a number of children
No, they weren't. She made that up.
Revisiting the work of
They
their
were not.
eyes that they had done before. And I chose the work of two children who were particularly engaged, but also that it really shifted their own image of themselves. So in this photograph, you can tell that this child has really focused on thinking about how the corners of his eye might look and how that is different. And even having that opportunity to look and say, the first time we read the book, he said, I've watched this video online and I love it. And I love this book because they look like me. And it was so powerful. In this photograph,
Wait, Sarah, can I interrupt for one quick second with courtesy? I'm just wondering if we might want to move on to Bethany, just so
this
that.
is the last slide I've got.
Okay, all right, sorry.
Sorry to ramble.
I'm just doing my moderation.
Yeah, I appreciate that, Monica. Yeah. And so in this last photograph, this child has really shifted the practice that she had in looking at her own eyes. And that came from not only seeing images of herself, but seeing images of other
Yes,
Asian American.
it was a dramatic
Pacific Islander
artistic
characters as well.
improvement
So
over the round eye. She got a little corner there.
And we also have
Are you
a
shitting
page
me?
to the university. So
I love that. She was like, the kid got like a little bit of corner on the eye. She was like, yes, we've succeeded. She acknowledges that not all eyes are round. Oh my, this is what my taxes are paying for, and it drives me insane.
Thank you very much. All right.
figure out how to stop sharing my screen.
Thanks, Sarah. So Bethany, you're up. Next, thank you.
Sarah, that's thank you so much for that. My work has been with older children, and I hadn't heard too much about the anti-bias curriculum, and I'm excited to read into that now.
Yeah.
So,
thank you. I can't wait to see your presentation.
Oh, it's funny, we have an overlap on one of our books that we look at. Although actually, no, that's not true. Not Martin's Big Words. It's My Daddy, Dr. Martin Luther King, kind of led to some of the exploration that I've done in New Hampshire. All right. So hi, everyone. I am Bethany Silva. I'm Research Assistant Professor of Education and Director of the Community Literacy Center. If you are interested in accessing the slides, I put a lot of links to resources on them. And so please feel free to follow this tiny URL that is there. The slides are set on, anyone can view them. So if that is something you want to do, please feel free to grab a screenshot right now, and then you can go right there. The pictures on the right-hand side are from one of the programs that we get to run at the Literacy Center when we can be in person. It's called Book to Art, and we read books and we make art. And so I'd like to, when I present on conversations about conversations through books with small children. I like to make sure that some of those small people are right there with their faces. And these are a different kind of masks that we made in relationship to a book than the kinds of masks
Well,
we
thank God
are
she
wearing
cut
right
her
now.
eyes out in an almond shape. Thank
So
God. Thank
I have
God.
2 slideshows going at the same time. So I have, I kind of walked through my why engage with diverse literature with children. And so I have some slides that have to do with that. And I am going to skip them and
Guys,
just
mount
for
that
time.
like
And
button
if
if you
someone
haven't
has,
already. I
has questions
appreciate
about
it.
it later, really the answer is when we talk about things, we learn and grow. And it's important to have conversation and dialogue about books that are both within and outside our realms of current understanding. But I have a whole spiel about how I some of the things that I keep in mind, and I'm happy to go back to all of those. And I think this is going to accidentally play when I hit go. Oh no, we didn't. And then we have 2 people who are a big part of my why, and then another piece. Okay, so happy to return to that later, but first I wanted to talk a little bit about how, and also give some interactive experiences of how people might engage young children in conversations as they're reading diverse literature. So as I was thinking about who the audience for this might be, I was thinking about the fact that some of the people here are going to be parents, some of the people are going to be teachers, some of the people are going to identify as a person of color, some of the people are going to identify as white. And so I really wanted to think across some of the practices that I put in place for different situations, both as an educator and as a parent. So the next slide, here we go. When I'm reading books with children, prior to any reading, I am considering these components. What are the age of the people who are taking part in this? What is the setting? What's the purpose of the reading that we're doing? What's the background knowledge of the children I'm working with? And how do these people identify? So, that's because the questions that arise, the ways I'll answer those questions and the ways I'll invite discussion all relate to this. So, for example, if I'm a white parent reading to a white child, I might be seeking to expand her racial literacy. So I need to think in advance about how to develop that racial literacy without normalizing deficit perspectives or creating a feeling that racism happened only in the past. If I were a parent of color reading to my child, I also might be thinking about what mirrors the book held up to my child and what questions it might bring up about how she understands her own racial identity. And for classroom teachers, our own identities as well as the identities of our students come into play.
These people think about race literally all the time. They're like, when you read a book to your child, you should be thinking about multiple factors regarding race in regards to how your 5-year-old fucking child is going to interpret that book. How are they going to see their own racial identity? How are they going to see other people's racial identities? What racial stereotypes are we going to be reinforcing today? These people are literally obsessed with race. And this is something that people really need to understand. It's like, if you think that the woke left is trying to fix racism, no, they are not. Racism is their God. It is their God. It is the center of their universe. It is the thing that they think about literally all the time. Would you try to kill off your God? Would you try to kill off the thing that is the center of your world? Would you try to kill off the thing that you literally went to college to get a PhD in? I wouldn't. I wouldn't at all. Incognito says the government is teaching discrimination at the taxpayer expense. Yes, they are. And in New Hampshire, that is not legal. I got banned on Twitter today for teaching parents how to report that shit. And I don't even care. I'd make that as a point of pride. That is a great fucking reason to get permanently banned on Twitter.
It's important for teachers who are white to consider the purpose and setting of any read aloud, while also considering age, background knowledge, and identities of their students. So a lot of teachers have heard the mantra, like, don't ask children of color to speak for their race when you're having classroom discussions around diverse books. It's also important to consider that a white child who lacks racial literacy can do real emotional damage to the children of color in the room. One example of a very nervy moment in my classroom, I had students making memes, which involved an image and some text. And the memes were about our internet usage rules, but one student chose to use a meme that was a watermelon meme, which had really negative racial undertones. And that student was white, had no idea what they were doing. And it was very important that I stop the class and say, okay, so I suspect people don't realize what just got said, or some people don't, other people might, and walked them through what that watermelon meme meant racially. And I had to pause and like hold back any feelings I had, because I
Watermelon
wanted to
is
know,
racist.
how could you? And instead I needed to call all the students into a discussion of what happens when we use images that we don't necessarily understand what they mean. So after considering the audience, I also think about my role as the adult. So the adult jobs are get fluent, translate to kids, embrace discomfort, and demonstrate your own learning. So getting fluent, teachers joke that in order to teach simple addition, we need to understand math on a calculus level. Our job as adults is to understand the racism, and history in the books we read with children on a calculus level. And so one good example is I was reading My Side of the Mountain with my son the other day, and we came to a part where there was a sign. I'm not even sure exactly why it was in the book, but there was a sign that the main character read that talked about a massacre that was committed by Native Americans on that site. And I was like, what is going on here? And so I needed to have a discussion with my son about the portrayal of Indigenous people in books, and why would the author necessarily have included this moment. And, this is a precious book to a lot of people. My Side of the Mountain is something that is a book that people love, love, love. But even those books that are precious to people have racially charged moments in them. And they also have moments that will help children to develop a sense of what is appropriate, and not understanding the history of Indigenous representation in children's literature would have meant that we might have skipped right over that part. And then translating to kid. So it's my job to understand race, racism, and history on a calculus level, but then I have to translate to kid. And I don't think of that as simplifying. I think of it as translating. So that involves considering the child's age, background knowledge, temperament, and interests, and then being clear, complete, and honest. So I'm never looking to be simple. I'm looking to explain in a way that makes sense. And so one thing I heard Sarah talking about was that's something that she also has to think about very much in her classroom as well, is, okay, well, how do I describe a moment where, how do I describe a moment where Dr. K was arrested? Like, what is understandable about that for a 2-year-old? And so that is an important part pre-reading for me, is to anticipate questions and think about how will I answer them in a way that's appropriate to the children that I'm reading with. And then discomfort. There's been so much research on the feelings of discomfort that arise when talking about race. And my goal with children is to acknowledge and feel my discomfort, and also to keep talking about race, so that the children that I work with and the children that I raise will grow up with racial literacy and an understanding that it is something to talk about and understand better, and to constantly be learning. And then demonstrating your own learning. The goal there is to develop comfort saying, I don't know. And when you learn something that's different from what you thought, acknowledge that you learned it. That is something that children really value. So coming over to this, are we going to move ahead? Sorry, I have 2 screens going. Oh, I went too far. I was on vacation and my computer, I'm gonna stop my share for 1 second so that I can get the screen to go back. My computer decided that it was going to be very angry at me for having been away from it for a week. And so now I can represent the screen. All right, so we'll go back into viewing it, present. Okay. So one of the methods that I like to use for getting a conversation going with children is borrowed from Art Education. And this is a free resource for anyone to use, but it works both in classrooms and it works as a parent. And so I'm going to walk you through how it goes. And if you go to the slides, you can steal the resource anytime you want. I mean, use the resource. It's meant for everyone to use it. All right, there we go. Okay, so the first thing that you do is you look.
Oh God.
Or
Oh
you
God.
don't. Because, oh, there we go. You look. So you begin by asking everyone to look at an image quietly for a few moments, which gives them an opportunity to
I
digest
see
the visual
Pac-Man.
information.
Pac-Man eating
And
a
then
snake.
you describe. So you have students describe what they notice about the work of art. What do we see? What more can we find? You might write the observations down if you're in a classroom. And actually, if you're a parent, you might as well. Although I find that when I'm doing this with my children, we usually just talk about what we observe. Then we think, we ask more analytical questions.
Exactly.
What do we think about what
Pac-Man.
we see? What do our observations tell us about the story, idea, mood, or feeling
Pac-Man
of
is
the work of
racist. Pac-Man is
art?
blue.
And then we
Pac-Man's not feeling
discover,
good.
so if factual questions arise, we might Google what we need to learn more about, and we consider
Non-binary. Well, he is blue though. We don't know he's non-binary. It kind of looks like blue and
respond.
boy.
We have personal responses. How does the artwork relate to your own life experience and prior knowledge?
It doesn't.
So we're going to try that with this book called Maybe Something Beautiful.
All right, everyone get ready to interpret art.
So what I'm going to have everyone do is we're going to spend about a minute looking at the picture, and you might count things like triangles, or you might observe color, or you might observe
Why would you count a triangle?
the structure of the painting in Maybe Something Beautiful. This is a book about how art changed a neighborhood, and it's a semi-autobiographical.
We're going to interpret art. It's going to be a fun project.
So
I want everyone to
go ahead and
participate.
just stare at this picture for a moment.
Oh, this one? This is what we're interpreting? I thought we were going to get something else. She's painting on a wall. She's painting red. There's a sun, so there's something happy. She's probably painted that sun painting too. Now she's painting over holy shit! She's painting over the white wall. She's painting over the whitewashing that has happened to society. That's what's going on. She is unwhitewashing the wall as a child of color, fighting back against racism, unwhitewashing the wall.
Now that you've had the chance to look at it, could you please this is the way we have to do it on Zoom. Normally in a classroom, people might raise their hands, or people might write it on a Post-it and bring it up to the board, or if I'm reading with my child.
She's unwhitewashing the wall with the blood
child just,
of the
tell me what you
slaves
see.
that came
But
before her.
please describe what you notice about the work of art. And your goal here is not to interpret, you're just describing what you see, and go ahead and put it in the chat.
I like the colors. I do like the colors. I like that there's some purple in there. I wish I had taken art history class. I wish I had taken it. I would have loved it. I didn't think it was practical, so I didn't take any art classes.
Oh my gosh, we're moving so fast now.
I'm entirely self-taught with art.
Buildings in the background are shades of gray versus emerging bright painting. Public art. My eyes are drawn to the pink banner. The sun in the background sky looking toward the girl painting. Bright colors, happy sun, active child, warm colors, smokestack in the background. Two suns, incinerator, swirls of smoke. See if any more come up. Thank you. Fire escapes on the building in the background. Large can of paint. You can't see the girl's face. The paint is red, but the painting is multicolored. I know, right? It's like magic paint. The blouse is the same bright colors as painting. Absolutely. Floral blouse. All right, so now, what are you thinking about what you're seeing? How are you, what do your observations tell you about the story or the idea or the mood or the feeling? You can go ahead and put it in the chat. I see a gray city is brightened through public art. It's a happy story, a sense of contentment, creating happiness. The color juxtaposed against the gray tells me this is a story of hope. The color transforms the gray city.
My interpretation was better. I want someone to come out with
Even
anti-whitewashing.
Face, the sun smile and the paint brings warmth. the young have something to say. Sarah, this book is amazing, and I hope you use it at the CSDC, by the way, because it leads directly to justice and activism, because the city is sad and gray, and then the community comes together to make it.
You're not allowed to do that in New Hampshire. That is against the fucking law. She just said, I hope you use this book because it leads to justice and activism. You're not supposed to be teaching children to be activists. That's not your fucking job.
Beautiful through art. She is spreading her internal brightness to the world. We assume the painter is a girl, female protagonist. By this point, we do know that she is female. It is true. Because it leads with, there was a little girl and she gives paintings to everybody, and then she gives them to an artist. Oh, good. I'm glad you have it on your list. Great. So we haven't really come up with any factual questions, but I know that when I'm reading this with students, one of the things that comes up is like, is this real? Is this true? And so we'll often use that moment to go look at the back matter in the book, and we'll talk about the fact that she is, the little girl is not real. The artist is real, and the artist who illustrates the book is real. And he began a project within his neighborhood to create community art to make the neighborhood more beautiful. And then we'll go look at some of the pictures of that neighborhood and how that project worked. The next step is to invite personal responses. So how does this relate to your own life experiences and prior knowledge? How does have you ever been a part of an art project? How do you feel about art? How does art make you feel? Share anything that you want to.
Bethany, I don't mind sharing, and I don't know if it's easier to unmute for this part, but as I saw this, I couldn't help but to think about what's happening currently in Rochester, where there's this huge initiative to create community murals. And it really made me think about what the impact to the curriculum in the elementary schools or in the middle schools could be in exploring a book like this within their art programs, and with my own children, because that's the community I live in.
Oh, I love
I remember what let's see, Sarah of the Makery in Durham did with that wall that was next to her shop before it closed down because of COVID. So she really sponsored folks to paint that wall, and it makes such a difference. And since I'm unmuted, and to be fair, I just am wondering, Bethany, if you can just wrap up in a few minutes so that we can have a half an hour for questions. It's all really great information. Thank you. And I hate to do this part of my job, but I'm going to do it.
Oh, that's fine. And I recognize that I've gone on too long. Okay, so that one took a while. I will wrap up, and then I see also I'll read into the transcript to make sure it goes on the video. Her name is Mira, and the sun is an important part of Mexican indigenous pre-colonial spirituality. I don't know if the author is Latinx. Yes, the author is Latinx, and I think that is an important part of this book. So I am going to move forward. So I also like to anticipate questions. And so one of the things, this is a book called Drum Dream Girl, and it is a true story about a young woman from Cuba who was one of the first female drummers to come out of Cuba. And it's a poem. And so with this particular book, we end up with a lot of situations where you have everyone on the island of music in the city of drum beats believe that only boys should play drums. And so you're going to get questions like, why would they believe something stupid like that? And you would also get, what is an island of music, right?
Why does the girl look lighter skinned than the other people?
And so sometimes the questions that children ask might relate to just simply understanding a book, and sometimes they relate to also understanding culturally why a place might be having why there might be a rule in place in a different place. Another rule of thumb I have is saying, I don't know, let's find out more about that. So the example for that is this is from a book called Mama's Nightingale, and the author of this book writes, or the story of this book is about a mama who has been detained by ICE, and her daughter starts a letter writing campaign to help her mom be released from the detainment center. And when I was reading this with students, one of their big questions that they had for me was, why is why is the mom in jail? Why would writing letters get the mom out of jail? And I realized I had thought that I understood this story, but I needed to understand rules about ICE detainment better. And so I said, you know what, hold the phone. And I went out, we went out, we did some Google searching to understand. And it was because she was being illegally detained by ICE in that she was only allowed to be detained for 48 hours without being charged. And so they needed to understand that. This was with second, third, and fourth graders. And they most certainly understood that concept of like, there's a certain amount of time that it's legal to be detained. And
wait, you're telling me that a second grader understands that when you're picked up by ICE, they can only detain you for a certain number of hours before they have to release you? You're telling me that a 6-year-old understands that? No. Most adults don't understand that. You are making this shit up.
And so the daughter was able to have some agency in that. So I will hold off on my talk about which books, but I have some thoughts about that as well. Some big considerations. Who solves the problem in the book? Is it an own voices author? What's the time period? Does it just give you a single story about any one group of people? And is it covered in awards? Covered in awards is usually a good sign, especially if there are specific awards that have to do with promoting diversity in children's literature, and those are very useful places to start. So I'll stop my share there and let everyone open up for questions.
Great, thank you, Sarah and Bethany. So I don't know.
That's right. That's right, Deborah.
questions?
This is a great point. The kids were probably just like, yes, we understand. And they have no idea. And they can't repeat back. They don't know what it is. Oh, dude, as someone who's been through the immigration process, like if a 6-year-old understands that, more power to that specific 6-year-old.
Bryn, that came up in the chat?
No. I would suggest that people just unmute themselves. There are not a lot of us. And so maybe it makes for a rich conversation if people just speak out.
Yeah, Ken poses a question in the chat that says, is the colorblind or color brave approach the best way to address racial diversity with young children? And I think, I think back to, I grew up in the 90s, or well, 70s, 80s, 90s, and my college essay was about color blindness because that very much was the lens that we were taught through at that time. And I think when we use that approach to think about things in that colorblind way, we really shut down conversations for children, and we stop thinking about the importance of being able to see and acknowledge different.
She just admitted that in the state of New Hampshire, they're teaching kids to be racist. What this woman is saying right now violates New Hampshire state law, because you cannot teach based on New Hampshire state law. You cannot teach that people have certain characteristics purely because of the color of their skin. You cannot teach that, dude. You're not allowed to. And so what she's actually saying right now violates New Hampshire state law.
And celebrate those. And I think that a lot of times when I see that happening in a classroom, it's often because there's a teacher who doesn't necessarily know how to answer the questions that might come up. It's easier to say, oh, we don't see that, we don't see that. I remember in the toddler room, there was a child who said, hey, who's that black lady? What's she all about? And the teacher that was in the room with me kind of did this like, whoa, what's going on? And really, the question that child had was, I've never seen a teacher with that color skin caring for children. And so sometimes what we need to do is really ask more questions to get at the real question that children have. And I found it really helpful to actually tell me more about what you're thinking about. And I think that's something that Bethany certainly touches upon in her presentation of that, figuring out, asking more questions, anticipating questions that might be happening.
Sarah,
This was September of 2021.
Is to ask the question, and this is something that Bethany, you talked about, what happens in those moments when, especially you're a teacher, and you seem to have been able to amenably work with the situation, but there are other times, in my classroom, in the college classroom, what happens when someone says something and you don't know how to answer it, right? So you might want to respond first to the colorblind, and then if you could both respond as well to what happens in those moments as a parent, a guardian, a teacher, and you don't know what to say at the moment, what can you do, to address?
Sarah, I was just thinking, as you mentioned that you wrote an essay for college on colorblindness, I realized I was so indoctrinated into colorblindness as well that I wrote a paper on why we should be colorblind in admissions.
Hang on. I was indoctrinated into colorblindness and wrote a paper about why we should be colorblind in our admissions process because of it. Indoctrinated into color blindness. They're literally saying that when in the 90s, back when things were normal, kind of, they're literally saying that back when schools taught that people didn't have, like, that people were all part of the human race and that we shouldn't look at skin color, we should just treat people as individuals. They're literally saying that they were indoctrinated into that. Dude.
Procedures in college that I've been mortified about for years.
Yeah, I've been mortified about it.
I mean, the problem with colorblindness is that it doesn't acknowledge the different ways that people live their life, like the different ways that people
I'm sorry. We gotta do real-time clip. We have to. I'm sorry. We have to. I have like 8,000 windows open on my desktop. I don't know how to hang on. I just need to shut some stuff down. I had to restart my computer before this, and things got wacky. Hang on. We're doing real-time clipping, guys. I'm sorry. I have to. I fucking have to. Okay. Hang on. Record. Oh shit, that was not where I wanted to be. Okay. All right.
You don't know how to answer it, right? So you might want to respond first to the colorblind, and then if you could both respond as well to what happens in those moments as a parent, a guardian, a teacher, and you don't know what to say at the moment, what can you do, to address?
Sarah, I was just thinking, as you mentioned that you wrote an essay for college on colorblindness, I realized I was so indoctrinated into colorblindness as well that I wrote a paper on why we should be colorblind in admissions procedures in college that I've been mortified about for years. I think, I mean, the problem with colorblindness is that it doesn't acknowledge the different ways that people live their lives, like the different ways that people experience their lives based on the differences in how the world treats people based on race, right? And so I think that color blindness is it's very much out of fashion. But that doesn't mean that doesn't mean saying like, oh, this is exactly how every person of whatever race is experiencing the world at all times, which is I like to lean on that was the danger of a single story slide. I like to lean on that idea is if you have just one idea or one narrative about any one group of people, that is also a very dangerous way to be, right? Like, so if we're thinking about activism in the
I respect the fact that she did actually bring that around, and she was like, it's a little racist to say that all people of one race have the same story. Okay, we came back around to that. Where's my video that I just filmed? Stream flow? Did I just cancel out of that? Dang. Okay, I'm gonna have to redo that another time. But like, what I will say is that I don't know where I put the file. Essentially, what it will say is like she reined it back in, but I don't really care. Actually, you know what? Fuck it. I'm gonna do it again. Sorry, we're gonna watch that one more time. I'm gonna do it again. We're gonna do it on the fly. It's gonna be quick. It's gonna be like 1 minute. I want this
college
clip.
Classroom. What happens when someone says something and you don't know how to answer it? Right. So you might want to respond first to the colorblind, and then if you could both respond as well to what happens in those moments as a parent, a guardian, a teacher, and you don't know what to say at the moment, what can you do, to address?
Sarah, I was just thinking, as you mentioned that you wrote an essay for college on colorblindness, I realized I was so indoctrinated into colorblindness as well that I wrote a paper on why we should be colorblind in admissions procedures in college that I've been mortified about for years. I think, I mean, the problem with colorblindness is that it doesn't acknowledge the different ways that people live their lives, like the different ways that people experience their lives based on the differences in how the world treats people based on race, right? And so I think that color blindness is it's very much out of fashion. But that doesn't mean
All right,
you know,
that's
that
where I'm
doesn't
going to
mean
stop
saying,
it.
like,
I'm
oh,
I'm being a
this is
little
exactly how
unethical
every
in
person
in
of
this particular clip. Create new document. There we go. Now I've got it. So I'm being a little bit unethical in the clipping of this video because she did actually bring it back round to say that, you know, maybe it's a little bit racist to say that, you know, to treat people like by the color of their skin, but like I just don't care. I don't care. These people are horrible people. These people are teaching children to be racist, and so I don't really give a fuck if I'm not being completely ethically honest in this situation. And that might sound horrible, but I just don't give a fuck. Hang on.
Color blindness is just very much out of fashion.
Okay, I got her. I got her. Let's keep going.
Whatever race is experiencing the world at all times, which is
Oh, wait, I gotta do a
that's-
super chat. Sorry, Murphy's pulled it. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Word I'm not allowed to say. Avalone. Do you think Adam Kinzinger fantasizes about Liz Cheney pegging him? I truly and completely do not want to know what Adam Kinzinger fantasizes about, if I'm honest about it. Don't want it. Don't care. Don't care. Don't care. Yes, exactly. A dishonorable opponent doesn't deserve courtesy. This woman would teach children to be racist, so I don't care if I'm clipping her out of context. Don't give a fuck. Don't care. Sometimes we need to show no mercy with these people. And listen, one of the things we're going to do in the Unwoke Army is I want a team of people clipping videos just like this. I want to create a metric F ton of clips just like this. And I want people to show no mercy on those clips because these people are doing bad things and teaching 5-year-olds that they're racist. There is a greater good here.
I like to lean on that was the danger of a single story slide. I like to lean on that idea is if you have just one idea or one narrative about any one group of people, that that is also a very dangerous way to be, right? Like, so if we're thinking about activism in the civil rights, if we're only thinking about Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., who is wonderful and amazing and important part of the narrative, then we're still only having one story and we're not learning about all the activists and all of the community members who are coming together. Actually, the reason that came up was because I have this book on my called The Youngest Marcher, which is about children who took part in the civil rights. And you do still end up having to talk about why would they go to jail. And the answer to that one is that Gandhi created a type of protest called civil disobedience, where people found laws that were unjust. So they were laws that don't make sense. And they would break those laws to demonstrate that those laws don't make sense and they are unjust, and to help change the laws. And so in breaking the laws, they would end up going to jail. And so that was why Dr. King was arrested. And that was why all the children in this book get arrested. They do it on purpose. And I found that explanation both helps to root historically the activism, and it also helps to let very young children understand that idea, especially when you start asking them, well, what are unjust rules? And then they start talking about the rules in their classroom and which ones make sense and which ones don't. Okay, that was the first part. What was the second part, Monica? I forget the second part of the question. Oh, you're on mute.
What happens in those moments when a student says something or a child says something, you're not quite sure how to approach it? What can you do?
Oh, that's the whole stop. Let's go. We need to stop and figure this out. And there's different types of things that they might ask. They might ask a question that you just don't know the answer to yet, right? And so you have to go do more research. And so in that case, it's that's the response that I do with that one. When someone says something hurtful,
oh, what the hell's going on?
I tend to stop and call people in and say, okay, this was just said. Here's some context for that. If I don't know exactly what to do about it, or if I think that if the person who said it had if the person who said it had a negative intent, I actually haven't had that experience. I've had more experiences with people not realizing what they were saying. But if someone had a negative intent, I think my mental plan is always to stop them and say, we're going to follow up on this
My
later
internet
and
is
have an
acting
individual conversation
crazy
with them later about it. You don't get that with preschoolers. So they're not trying to be hurtful. That's not their thing.
Well, occasionally we do, but not certainly. I don't think it ever has really happened for me around race. I think there are a couple of words that we think about in preschool pretty regularly. One is observe, so we're looking at things carefully, and the other is reflect. We need time to think about things. And so if I'm ever on the spot, there's certainly that pause for perhaps research, but sometimes I say that just I need a thinking minute to collect my thoughts about how I'm going to respond. We also do a lot of work around the zones of regulation in self-regulation. And so the zones, red is angry, yellow is excited, green is that just right, and blue is sad. And so I will acknowledge as part of my practice kind of that, ooh, you asked that question, for some reason, my body went right into the yellow zone. So I've got to kind of get my body back to green so we can have this conversation together. And I explain why I had that reaction. I think the same can be true in that period of reflection around that, the college essay about color blindness. So it invites an opportunity, particularly with our college students, to talk about the evolution of our thinking, right? And so we've learned something at a point in our life that we held to be true, and we have the right and the ability to grow and learn. And so I hope that it becomes an invitation and a little bit of vulnerability when I'm having conversations with students, particularly around race and identity.
Cora, you have a question?
Yeah, so thank you, Sarah, and thank you, Bethany, for being part of this panel discussion, or for being the panel discussion. My question is, how do you respond to kids? And I don't know if the kids that we're speaking about, the pre-K to grade 3, say this. How do you respond when kids say you are racist? Or that's, you know. I mean, I have my own opinion about it, but.
Yeah, I mean, it depends on if something is racist or not. You know, I was once sitting at a table with a group of children, and one of the children was pointing around the table and said, black, white, black, white, black, white. There's a pattern. And another child said, shh, that's racist. And so in that situation, I said, let's talk about that. What does being racist mean to you? And so they had a wonderful conversation about, are we allowed to talk about race? Is talking about race racist? Is identifying that someone is of a race, a racist act? And so I guess, as with all things, I try to open it up to discussion. If they say something, if they name something as racist, and it's the same discussion, except it's okay. So how do we identify that that's racist, and why would it be racist?
What do you say to them in that discussion?
The finer point that
how do you define
challenging,
racism? Did she give a definition of racism? Did I miss it?
This is not for her, and she is very, very, she's an activist, so she understands a lot about this. So I think the finer point is when we say to people, or if you don't react when people say, I'm not racist, right? I have, members who are Black, or I have members who are Latino in my family. So let's just say I'm Caucasian. So I couldn't possibly be racist. So how do we teach children that there's a difference between being racist and saying a joke, for example, that is racist?
What a great question.
I think that is the challenge that teachers, parents are facing now.
Answer that question, please.
HB2 in the budget, for example, right?
HB2C,
I can speak certainly
CRT
from a personal standpoint. I remember for pretty much most of my childhood, my dad was a bit like Archie Bunker, which probably ages me a lot. And so
she just called her dad a racist, by the way.
He had
she
a
called
lot
her
of
father a
friends that were
racist.
people of color. And so that was really what he said. Well, I can't be racist because. And so for me, there's this identification
literally
of,
calling her father a
racist. Say
racist
jokes and things that are racist. Just because you have friends of a certain color or ethnic background does not mean that you are not racist.
She literally called her father a
really
racist.
Putting some firm boundaries down for both my father and actually my father-in-law, which got to be really uncomfortable.
Oh, your father-in-law's a racist too. Oh, good.
In front of my children, and I think so much a part of my practice as an early childhood educator is defining things and expanding language for children. That I find myself doing that with adults. My husband points it out to me regularly, and so I find with some of these conversations, particularly around race, finding the definition. Well, what does it mean to be racist or to do things that are racist? What is racism? And then being able to make some more connections. I find those conversations to be a bit easier in a one-on-one situation. I find that if you're having a conversation with someone where you are teasing that apart, doing it in a group can be really overwhelming and inappropriate. I find the most growth happens from those, like, let's just have a conversation about it rather than coming from that accusatory standpoint. I think the other piece of that is modeling that practice.
Yeah,
My
Tom
children
J,
have heard me
excellent.
have conversations, particularly with my father. And now I
Definite
hear them
daddy
having those
issues.
conversations perhaps with peers of, I hear you saying you're not a racist, but if you say that joke, you're creating an environment where I feel uncomfortable. And so I'm going to ask you to stop.
I guess my question would be, and maybe Monica is asking it, is how would you teach that to children? The difference. I mean, we can talk about structural racism when we are a little bit older, but when we're talking to children, how do we make that distinction? And maybe that's your question, Monica.
Yeah.
It's more about what's developmentally appropriate.
These people
Because
have,
as
you
a
know
parent,
what's striking about
let's
this?
say not
These people literally have no idea how to talk to kids. These people are saying like things like, kids completely understand that you can only be held so long by ice before you like, these people have zero idea how to talk to kids. I don't even like kids. And I understand more about kids than these people. I don't even like children. There's a reason I don't have children. I don't fucking like them. But I understand that children don't understand this stuff more than these people who are teaching kids in our schools.
educated as Sarah and Bethany are, what's appropriate for a 3-year-old or a 5-year-old, in reference to talking to them, what is racist, right? So I think that's kind of riffing on Cora's question.
Mm. Yeah, I think, with younger children, being able to have that standpoint of, oh, I've heard you say this, and this is something that could hurt children's feelings, and this is why. And kind of having it be, oh goodness, the university's working really hard to save money on lighting, and that means it keeps going dark, and I have to like wave my arms.
That was
And so
interesting.
I think keeping it clear and concise when you're talking to perhaps a 3-year-old about that. I think as they get older, you can expand upon that more. Well, why does it hurt someone's feelings? What does that really mean? So, and as I have a 10-year-old right now. I've had some of those conversations with her when she was an 8-year-old. And I think it's just, you can dive a little bit deeper and have them do a bit more perspective taking. If you were someone who was Black or Asian and you heard them say that, how do you think they might feel? And I think that can be this powerful piece. I don't know if you want to expand upon that, Bethany, at all.
Yeah, I was thinking about also like understanding the differences between like individual and group and structural. I tend to not use the phrase structural racism with children because it has a lot of syllables.
Yes, that's the only reason why kids might not understand structural racism. It's a lot of fucking syllables.
On activism, we talk about what rules are in
Oh,
place.
Murphy's Pool. Sorry, I missed your super chat.
Rules that are in place that affect different.
Murphy's Pool, I apologize. We are drinking, I drank a pumpkin spice latte nitro from Left Hand and it was delicious. I'm not drinking anymore because we're about to wrap up and I'm about to go to a barbecue, but you've missed some highlights today. This has been like a banner day, I think. This is like, again, this is like old school. This was about a year ago. This was September 2021, several months after the anti-CRT law got implemented in New Hampshire, which is where these people are. They're actively breaking the anti-CRT law and like half of the things that they're teaching, which is pretty great. But that's to catch you up for right now. Guys, we're about to wrap up. We got a couple minutes left. Mount that like button if you haven't already.
Different people differently. So for example, that comes into play with going back to the youngest marcher, it comes into play that like there are rules in place about what people of color can do that impact them differently. And so then we'll bring it to the present and we'll talk about, are there rules in place nowadays that affect different people differently? And so for both 5-year-olds and 8-year-olds, that's a conversation that they can have. When you're talking about like a 3-year-old, it can be harder. As far as I've been reading the HB2 rules, and then I read the guidance by the state, which doesn't seem to match the language of the two. But from what I understand, it's like that's within those rules. Although don't take my word for it, go by the guidance of your school district. But understanding like historical experiences and current experiences, putting them together is and considering similarities and differences is, from what I understand, not included in the restrictions of the bill. Although if somebody else has dug more deeply than I have, I would love to hear what they've found.
It's a question from Monica.
Yeah, I'm just throwing out questions, but if other members of the forum have questions, certainly unmute and ask.
I have a question. The events of this summer and the early spring hate API incidents, children are going back to school, and I worry about the Asian children going back to school given what they have experienced over the summer. What should parents look for? Children don't come home and tell their parents, so-and-so called me this, right? What should parents keep an eye on so that they, see what's going on with their children?
Yes, what should parents keep an eye on? That's an excellent question.
In my house, we have the practice of dinner time being a point where we talk about the peaks and the pits of the day. And so I think having an opportunity for children to have space to have a conversation about the really great parts of their day and the really challenging parts of the day can be helpful, but not every child is going to share something like that. I think I often see changes in behavior. What is typical? And that's tricky when you're having a transition, right? So you're going back to school and that's a transition in itself. But I think being really clued into your child can be helpful. And then I think sometimes
I need to watch this again too.
Of going to school. Like, how does your child respond when you say it's time to go to school? Or if you're saying particular names of children in the classroom or on the school bus. And I think, I have a group of children who are going off to kindergarten. And so some of the things that I've been thinking about in the right now is how do I reinforce some of this work we've done around self-advocacy and being able to stand up and say, this isn't okay. And also, how do you promote activism among children in the community and having them stand up for other children? And it's something that, I have the opportunity with the group I'm with currently. I've been with them since they were 3 and now they're 5. Some of them were 2 when I had them for the first time. Some of them were infants when I had them in a classroom. And so this is work that we've been slowly building upon over the course of their time at CSDC. And so I would, again, think about, do you see changes in their behavior? What is the timing of those changes or the emotional response they may have about going to school? And then again, this piece of self-advocacy and activism.
Thank you.
I think, and then to add to Sarah's comment,
at some point I need to make a clip of
and,
hang on, we got a super chat from Murphy's Pool, so I want to pause it for a second. At some point what I need to do, and I would need so if you want to be in the Unwoke Army and go to unwokearmy.com and sign up for the webinar I'm doing next week, if you do, at some point what I want to do is string together a series of clips of all of the teachers that I have saying we're training children to be activists. It's about activism. They need to learn activism. They're activists. They're activists. 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 I want to make a full clip because I probably have across the happy hours and spy streams that I've done, probably at least 100 examples of teachers saying that it's their job to make children activists. And I want a full fucking montage of those clips. I think that'd be pretty great. Murphy's Pool says, mount that like button like vegan beta males mount field mice. Hunter. Thank you, Murphy's Pool. I appreciate it.
The teacher, and if the teacher doesn't understand that it's derogatory about race, I would go up the ladder. I would approach it from of course we're all going to work together to address this racial.
So one of the by the way, guys, so there's a guy on Twitter. Do you guys know Brick Suit? He's this guy that's known for going to Trump rallies wearing a brick suit, and he's seriously trying to get my actively unwoke account banned right now. This is a Trump fucking guy. Again, you have to know who the controlled opposition is. This is a Trump guy who's trying to get the actively unwoke account banned. He keeps saying, are you Karlyn? Are you Karlyn? Are you Karlyn? He's pissed off because I blocked him a year and a half ago because he sided with the white identitarians over me. And so he's seriously trying to get my actively unwoke account banned right now. And I'm like, why are you trying to get an account banned? That's just a book about fighting back against the woke left. Why on earth would you, as a Trump supporter, want to get an account banned that's teaching people about how to fight back against the woke left? This is who these people are. This is who conservatives are. They are whiny little fucking bitches. No offense to any conservatives here, because I'm sure it doesn't apply to anyone here. But so many conservatives are whiny little fucking bitches that couldn't handle that I called them on their bullshit. Literally trying to get an account banned that's about fighting back against the woke left. Can you imagine? Can you imagine?
This racialized incident.
Mm-hmm.
But if if other people don't see the importance of it, I would be reaching out to allies within the district. I think one really important thing that the Oyster River Cooperative School District has is,
I know you never do
there's
that,
a
Liberty
lot of
Lion.
people
I
on
know.
is it a task force on
You are the real deal.
diversity, equity, and inclusion? Yeah, and so there are a lot of people who are thinking about, who are working on
There are a lot of people
creating,
who are breaking the law in New Hampshire with those task forforces
creating
on
an
diversity,
inclusive,
equity, and
learning environment.
inclusion.
And so if the teacher doesn't recognize it, I've seen that before. I had a friend whose child was in my son's class before we moved to New Hampshire. But
that's true on
like,
169. The extremes of both end are whiny little bitches. That's very, very true.
The damage that it could be doing to the
There are
child.
a
And
lot
so,
of whiny little bitches
and
on the
so,
woke left as well. We're watching some of them in this
we were an environment
webinar.
where she didn't feel comfortable bringing that conversation further along. And it was also half a decade ago at this point too. So I feel like, or I hope that we're in a different place now. But it should go above. And if the people in power don't recognize the damage that it's doing to children, come talk to me and I'll help. Or I'm pretty sure anyone on this board would help. And then again, the school counselor, because that's real damage, and that is emotionally something that that might need to go beyond the support that a parent can give.
So
Thank you.
the 5 minutes that we have left, if anyone wants to write a question
I'm a
about,
libertarian.
what
I'm
would
not
you
a
like,
conservative. I'm a
future
libertarian.
panel to address that may be helpful to the New Hampshire Racial Unity team about issues that are pressing
Never been
for
a
you.
conservative.
Not
for one single second.
You wanted to say something. Otherwise, I have another question, but I can certainly hold off on that.
No, go ahead.
And Michelle has a question too.
Okay, let's go with Michelle.
That's a good
So
question,
Michelle's
Bob.
question is, do you talk about slavery with 3 to 5 year olds?
I do. So
They
my
all act
language
like
is
little
different.
kids.
And I don't talk about, every aspect of slavery, but I feel like it's an important part of our country, and it's an important part of the way that a lot of people in this country continue to experience life. And so I do talk about it with them. I don't talk about every single aspect. I don't sugarcoat it. There was one of the slides that I had was a book that got pulled from the shelves about two people making, like, it got recalled by the publisher because it told the story of two slaves making a cake for George Washington for his birthday, and how happy and proud they were to get to make the cake. And so that's the thing, is not changing history because 3 to 5 year olds need to hear something, like, because I don't want 3 to 5 year olds to hear about the absolute brutality of slavery. Instead, I'll talk about how it like slavery was cruel, but I won't necessarily talk about those details until they get a little bit older. My son was obsessed with understanding slavery when starting very, very young.
No, your son was not
so I had
obsessed
to
with
learn a lot of
understanding
language
slavery. You
around it.
projected that onto him. Come on. Your
Yeah, I
son
would
was not
agree.
obsessed with
Those are
understanding
conversations
slavery. That is a
I have also
lie.
had, and I have been doing a lot more.
Yes, there are
learning
absolutely whiny little
recently about
bitches
the
in the
language
libertarians,
that
King
I
Peter.
use.
There
So I
absolutely
would
are.
say
You're
someone
correct.
who was enslaved versus someone who is a slave. And
But
thinking
no,
more
I mean, there are
about,
more whiny bitches
labeling
than
the,
conservatives than there are libertarians. I'm sorry, there
what
just
they went
are.
through rather than having that be their identity.
But there are absolutely whiny little bitches
and
that are
again,
libertarians.
it's a lot of the conversations that I have with children are very individualized. So I have to know where that specific child is in their development in order to know how to respond to them. And I know that because of all the assessment that we're doing throughout the day in our classrooms, but also when I'm having those conversations with my children, I know where they are as well. And so I think that's a huge piece of the puzzle that we haven't as much talked about, but really having that that window to where children are developmentally.
So I think that maybe one of the conversations we could have in the future would be, and this is the question I would have asked Sarah or Bethany, but there's not a lot of time. Have teachers come to you in the past 3 months to say, now that this new bill has passed, right? I'm a public school teacher.
That's the one that
What can I
outlaws this
teach?
shit.
How can I teach it?
You can't teach any of
what's
this
gonna
shit.
fall within or without the parameters. This kind of fear of maybe I can't teach what I have in the past in the way that I've had. And, we can't answer that in 1 minute now, but that is certainly something I think that a lot of public school teachers
You're
are worried
right. You
about.
can't
So
teach any of
if you
this
have
shit
anything in
now.
the next 30 seconds that you can contribute to, that would be great. And if not, for another session.
my quick soundbite is that human diversity is not divisive, and that
She's
as an
like, just
educator, I have to
ignore
take a
it. You can
stand,
teach whatever
and
you
I'm going to
want.
continue to teach what I have taught
See?
for the last
She's
18
like,
years.
this
And
is
certainly it's evolved over the last
Oh!
18 years, and it will continue to evolve. But
flat
at
out
some
saying to
point,
ignore the law. Flat out saying to ignore the law.
I sometimes worry about what this law says. I have the backup of being at the university. I do have my teaching
Oh.
license. I do run the risk of losing my teaching license.
Never mind, UNH.
But
She
again,
can
I don't
teach what she
believe that
wants.
human diversity is divisive.
As a board member of the Racial Unity Team, I would just like to make a comment about these last two issues.
That's the
and
group
I'm glad,
working in Exeter.
Monica brought that up. I've been very, very concerned about HB2 and the rules and regulations that have been
Because you're violating
spelled out
the
by
law.
the Commissioner of
Because you're
Education, the Department of
violating the
Justice, and the
law.
Commission on Human Affairs in our state. And I hope all teachers are aware of those. And it may take some extra special attention on the part of all teachers to preserve exactly what Sarah and Bethany have been stressing in terms of how to approach diversity and education. It is threatened. Doing everything we can at the Racial Team and this panel example.
Your
of
law,
address it.
you're funding
Are people involved? I hope that. And I want to, in addition to the
sure your
secondary
funding
school
gets
piece many, many years ago, so
Stop it.
refreshing and invaluable for me.
You are of a
how
state
you
fucking
at the education level are with issues of racism and diversity. I really appreciate that.
I'm sure
Yes,
she's
and
a
I
very
will
nice
chime
lady.
in
I'm
and
sure she
say
is. I probably
thank you
shouldn't have
so
called her
much,
a bitch,
Bethany
but
and
whatever.
Sarah. And I'm looking at Cora's note here that teachers are a gift. And I think it has been a gift for me that Sarah was my kid's teacher many years ago. So thank you for the work that you do and continue to do and for being on the panel. It's been fun to have you and very educational as well. Thank you.
All right, guys. Well, I guess that's all we have for today. Liberty Lion says, do they have more videos after this? Well, not after this specifically, Liberty Lion, but let me show you. Let me show you what's on their YouTube channel. They have a lot of crazy stuff on their YouTube channel. They've got like a 4-part racial unity symposium. We can watch those. We're going to have to watch those. I'm going to have to watch those anyway. They've got this racism. I really want to watch this Racism 101 series. They've got a lot of stuff. They've got a lot of stuff on this channel. There aren't even that many videos. They're like, what, like 15, 16 videos? Like, they don't even have that much stuff. But like, there's going to be a lot of goodies because that presentation was fantastic. All right, guys. Well, that was a real presentation from the Racial Unity Team in New Hampshire, where they're pretty openly and flagrantly violating New Hampshire state law, at least in their work with the Exeter Regional School District. So we'll see how this goes for them. Again, thank you for joining me for happy hour. I've got to run to go to a barbecue, but we do happy hours every Friday, usually at 5 p.m. I'm sorry I moved it a little bit early and I didn't really give people adequate time, but people can watch the replay. Usually we do them at 5 p.m. on youtube.com/activelyanwoke. I hope you'll mount that like button on the way out the door. I hope you will subscribe to the channel, and I hope you'll consider supporting my work at activelyanwoke.com/support. You can become a member on Patreon. You can get some cool exclusive perks like that awesome Mad Hatter giving out the red pill t-shirt or a sticker. You can also support my work on Locals through a one-time gift, a monthly gift, or an annual gift, all of which I greatly appreciate. And then you can also support my work on Substack as well. There are some other ways too. I'm sure I'll update this page eventually, but those are kind of the main ways and the best ways I think for right now. But I do appreciate the support, guys. And yeah, I'm probably going to do a stream tomorrow to talk about the Exeter stuff and to show people what it is. I'm not sure exactly what time, but if you get into my Locals, which is kb.locals.com, just join as a free member if nothing else, and you'll be able to get notifications about when I'm going live, because my main Twitter account got banned. Follow me on Actively Unwoke on Twitter, which of course is not me. Of course it's not me. Oh, Judy, I need to send them out, but like I ran out of fucking book plates. I ran out of book plates, and I had to order some more. So a batch will be going out in the mail. Hopefully, actually just bring them by the post office. Well, post office is closed. I'll bring them by the post office tomorrow. I already sent out one batch. I got another batch going out, and I just needed to order some new book plates. So those will be coming very, very soon. Again, guys, thank you. We'll see you soon.